Okay, the topic that's kind of kicking up a storm right now is the whole Evergreen College controversy that has been boiling over for a while. I think on May 26th, which was Friday, um, there was a day of absence, as they call it, in the campus community there. This is a campus in Olympia, Washington State. And it has boiled over into open racial conflict, racial and you could say ideological conflict. And the most serious figure in this is a professor who was famously caught in a hallway talking to a bunch of students named Brett Weinstein. Now, initially I was watching what was happening, and I said, I don't have any sympathy for this guy, you know, because first of all, he admitted that he is a progressive, okay? Now, I did listen to a couple interviews with him, and I have to say, you know, he's a little more clear thinking than some of the progressives that I have in mind, okay? I do believe that there are a lot of progressives that are a little more reasonable and have a worldview that's developed more out of logic than out of emotion, but they're in the distinct minority. In fact, I've always believed that progressives as a whole are more guided by emotion and a sense of chasing justice. That's why they're called social justice warriors by the people making fun of them, or snowflakes in the more extreme case. So what I was seeing was really the end result of what progressivism, what socialism creates, which is Maoism. I wouldn't say that in every case Maoism is the result, but when you take it ideologically to its logical conclusion, you have to take into account that in campuses where, you know, the left has had certainly, what's the word, hegemony. I'm using 4-syllable words. Look at me. They've had control over the minds of the youth for decades. Okay, in fact, as far as I remember, I didn't read his book, but William F. Buckley, who was a conservative theorist back in the 50s and 60s already, he'd already warned at that time that the faculties of Ivy League universities like Yale, Harvard, Dartmouth, Columbia, that they were being dominated by Marxists and other types of radicals, related radicals who are analogous to Marxists. They might not have the same Marxist ideological belief system, but they do believe in numerous shared beliefs of Marxists. Okay, they may be, for example, these radical feminists is the easiest example. There's the and you know what? I'll go ahead and say this: there were people already in the 70s and 80s. There was famously, this friend of mine always cites this KGB defector named Yuri Bezmenov, who stated quite clearly that the gay rights movement would be used as a wedge in order to create subversion in American society, okay? Now, hold on a second. That's not me telling you that the gay rights movement is a subversive movement that is entirely made up of spies, etc. There are, you know, for example, the Cambridge spy gang in England, most of them were gay guys. But that's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say that the subversives would use movements like that, like feminism, like the gay rights movement, like the black civil rights movement as a smokescreen, and they would infiltrate them. And it's been proven that in Martin Luther King's own movement, there was a very famous Marxist. His name was Hunter Pitts Odell. He was a black guy. There was also Harry Haywood, I think his name was. Also a diehard Marxist. James Baldwin, a very famous icon of the civil rights movement. Not taking it away from him, but he was a out-and-out Marxist. He was also a gay guy. Okay, this is well known. If you study the civil rights movement and you look into the backgrounds of these people, these aspects of their legacy are downplayed in mainstream texts. However, in all of these movements, there is a tinge of Marxism at the root. I believe, in fact, that Malcolm X, who's generally considered to be the more radical of the two icons of the civil rights era, even though he was more of a black separatist for most of his life, for most of his career at least, I believe that he had more of a conservative social outlook than many of Martin Luther King's surrounding staff. There was a major infiltration of the civil rights movement by Marxists. Now, flash forward to today, okay? Fast forward, flash forward. We have a campus in a state that is governed by Democrats. It's one of the most progressive states in the union. I grew up, I loved grunge rock, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. Chris Cornell just died. Rest in peace. This is a state that is not given to reactionary politics. It hasn't been for decades. The conservatism is only present in eastern Washington. The rest of the Puget Sound area of Washington is mostly populated by hardcore progressives, or at best, corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats and whatnot. It's a very politically active state. The Northwest in general is. Oregon, we just had that issue with the burritos in Oregon. It's the same idea. So are they really fighting racism, or are they attacking other progressives? That's what Maoism is, okay? Like I'm saying, the groundwork was laid back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's when these earlier professors, Saul Alinsky, for example, Hillary Clinton's professor, was a professor, I believe, at University of Chicago. Might have also been at Harvard. And he was one of these radical professors, and he inspired new generations of people to follow in his footsteps, okay? And remember, this was before the Beat period. This was before even, the Beat period would be before the hippies. But it was these people that they germinated the seed of communism on our college campuses. So where does the Maoism come in? That's where we have to watch some of these clips, and I'll explain to you what the parallels are. Okay, notice this first clip is from a meeting that took place after the famous clip where Professor Weinstein was confronted in the hallway. It was a meeting of the entire school, apparently with a lot of the faculty and the administration of the school. And watch some of the statements made by this faculty collective bargaining negotiator.
So together, the United Faculty of Evergreen and the college have agreed upon the following. We share a mutual interest in ensuring that all Evergreen students receive an education that is culturally competent, culturally relevant, and free from the negative effects of bias. I'm going to read that one more time.
So watch this. She has to repeat herself. Why is that?
We share a mutual interest in ensuring that all Evergreen students receive an education that is culturally competent, culturally relevant to you, and free from the negative effects of bias.
Okay, what this is basically what they would do under Mao. It was called self-criticism. You would have party officials go before the party members and basically attack themselves and attack their colleagues for not being ideologically pure. This is simply them reiterating, basically trying to grovel at the feet of the Maoist throng of students. Okay, now they don't know that they're Maoists. I don't know that they do, but this is typical behavior, not just in Maoism, by the way, but in cults. I'm just using Maoism as an example because this is part of the left. Okay, in this next clip, we see her mention a different aspect of Maoism.
To achieve this, we recognize that Evergreen faculty members must have access to and take advantage of professional development opportunities and training to address subjects including, but not limited to, institutional racism and the needs of students of color, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex, and asexual students, undocumented students, victims of sexual assault, and students with disabilities, to name a few.
Okay, what did she just say there? She said, basically, we need access to training for sensitivity training. What this really means is re-education. Re-education is one of the primary instruments of Marxist and you know, by extension, Maoist brainwashing, basically. They're saying, you know what, we need to recognize that we have to improve our teaching methods and our training in order for us not to poison your minds with ideas that you can't handle. Now let's talk about what that implies for the future. Between the previous clip and this one, she has committed, according to the agreement that she signed and the rest of the faculty has signed, to mandatory training of this type beginning next fall. But let's listen to what she says next.
And we ratified that agreement together today. Next steps. Required training for all staff currently includes a review of the college's non-discriminatory policy, or discrimination policy, I should say. We commit to providing cultural competency, sensitivity, and anti-bias training in the training required of all staff. By requiring this training for all staff, we also will ensure that all search committees or hiring committee members are also trained. We are launching staff training in the fall and we'll be offering it throughout the year. Thank you.
So what she's basically saying is that a person who does not conform to these basic ideas will not be eligible for a position working in any capacity at Evergreen College. So basically even the guy who runs the sprinklers will be under this mandate. Notice in this next clip a student makes a very interesting request of the university.
In the near future.
We also asked in our demands that police services sell all of their lethal weapons, and that was not addressed, and I would like to hear what you think about that.
Our police officers are commissioned police officers in the state of Washington. They serve not just Evergreen State College, but they must provide backup to Thurston County, Olympia PD, and the State Patrol when they are understaffed. They will not go into those conditions unarmed. And so I have no plan to disarm the police at this juncture. Given their responsibilities, they have to have firearms.
So these students are actually trying to dictate how the police can be armed at their college. Now this is they've already held people against their will. If you've seen the other clips, and I'm not going to play the other clips because they're, you know, I can't make this video endless, but you know, they've basically taken control of their campus. This professor, or the president of the college, is this guy. He's basically told them to stand down, and he's let the inmates run the asylum, as many people have already said. And I would say now that if they're asking for the police to be disarmed, this would be grounds for the college to close down and dissolve this semester and pretty much end the session.
They have to have firearms. Now, hey,
stop harming killer! You're putting us in danger!
So that's kind of ironic that these losers are yelling that you're putting us in danger. I have never heard a story of campus police actually beating up anybody. One of the reasons that campus police are a necessity, one would think, are because of incidents like what happened last year. I think it's called Umpqua Community College in Oregon, where a crazed student murdered a number of other students with a firearm. Virginia Tech, what was that, 10 years ago or so? Another incident. There was the incident last year at Ohio State where a Somali migrant, I think he only wounded a few students, but it still counts. So this is actually, the fact that he's entertaining these idiots is a sign that the college has basically lost the capacity to really teach these people. They've lost the ability to show them that there are those who teach and there are those who learn. And, beyond all the philosophical garbage about how the students learn just as much from the teacher as the teachers learn from the students, this is nonsense. These are clearly students that don't want to learn from their teachers. And the teachers have encouraged this behavior. Just by witnessing that faculty behavior, Professor Weinstein actually went on the Rubin Report today and basically validated the fact that the faculty is caving into the demands, the administration is caving into the demands, so they're in dereliction of their duty. They're basically saying, you know what, we're just going to go along to get along, and in fact, many of them believe in this garbage, in this nonsense ideology that hasn't created success anywhere else.
Hi, my name's Denise. We were just wondering regarding the police, maybe it would be, my understanding is there is one person of color on that police force. Maybe if there was a little bit of racial diversity with the police department, it might help.
I think that's the case with all staff and faculty. We need to improve and increase significantly the hiring of faculty, staff of color, including the police.
Okay.
Yes.
Also,
So what you have here is another case of this college president basically begging off, not really engaging in the real problem. The real problem is that these kids are idiots and that they're not going to accomplish anything. You could keep them at the college. Some of these professors and administrators, their interest is to just keep the gears turning. They don't care that they're churning out basically husks of empty corn. Empty husks of corn, whatever you want to call it. This demand that the police officers be more people of color, what's it based on? It's based on nothing. Okay, there hasn't been any incident reported where the police harassed anybody. And let me turn your attention to an op-ed that one of these idiots wrote about the current police chief very recently. So this guy, Felix Chrome, or if that's even his name, he says, "Fuck civility. Student response to police chief Stacey Brown's comments on campus protest. The last issue of this publication," oh no, sorry, it's Georgie Hicks. So I don't know if Georgie's a dude or a girl, but Georgie, maybe stop worrying about your gender, but maybe worry about your career, because this is going to come up at some point. Last issue of this publication included an interview of Stacey Brown. Should be interview with Stacey Brown, the new Evergreen chief of police. Within the article, Brown made several comments I found unacceptable and in need of dissection. Brown says that in her time as a student at Evergreen, she graduated in 2006, she never saw anything like the protests that occurred at her swearing in. I never would have imagined that I would come from the Evergreen State College. I mean, we're peaceful, right? Brown continued, "I didn't see anything like this when I was here. Heated discussions, sure, but they were always civil. I find it concerning that the new chief of police seems to have no understanding of the current political atmosphere on this campus or the nation at large, which has been quickly becoming more radicalized in response to police brutality, murder and enslavement in the prison system committed and perpetrated by this nation's police force. Black Lives Matter and local events such as the shooting of local black men Andre Thompson and Bryson Chaplin have pushed this radical resistance into the mainstream. So I'm reading off camera, the two people that they're referring to were these two black people that were accused of assaulting a police officer and in the city of Olympia, and they pled guilty a couple months ago of third-degree theft. Okay, so it's not as if we're talking about two guardian angels or something. These are two guys. They assaulted a Safeway clerk. They threw a case of beer at the clerk. Their attorney claimed that they threw the case of beer at the ground. So what's this? Stop defending morons. Okay, let them go to prison. Who cares? Now let's get to this paragraph. All of this with the added bonus of the inclusion of the word civil, a word which currently and historically has been used to delegitimize and shut down black and brown people, often fighting against uncivil treatment in the first place. A willingness to use this word connotes a lack of understanding of racial issues in this country. With this, along with her mention of things like this not happening in 2006 and her general demeanor when speaking about policing, it seems Brown may be stuck in an ideology from the past. Brown's attitude seems disturbingly reminiscent of arguments for America as a post-racial or colorblind society, an ideology that has proven to be false and harmful. Then they go on to complain about the police monitoring Facebook. Newsflash, the police often monitor Facebook because people get stalked and people get threatened on Facebook, including by people like you. Okay? Brown goes out of her way to dismiss bad apples in the police force as if it is reasonable to compare police to other professions, stating, I know that there are bad apples in every bunch, whether it's teachers or doctors or cops. This statement shows a disregard for the differences in the power that police hold over citizens versus the powers that doctor. That's one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard, okay? The teachers, fuck it. But the evidence is here that teachers have ruined the minds of a lot of kids, okay? Because this is how they're behaving. But if you don't think that doctors can affect people's lives and cause death, cause destruction just as much as they can act for good, then maybe you should do away with the Hippocratic Oath and, for that matter, malpractice law. I mean, is that what you're trying to say? Those are very, very onerous. I talk about malpractice all the time. I'm not a physician, but you all know what I mean. Brown has expressed commitment to promoting community policing, which is really just police lingo, for police public relations campaigns and programs that encourage snitching, destroying any real sense of community as more of those around us become part of the police surveillance apparatus. You know what? That's a funny thing that she's saying, or he, whatever this thing is. Community policing is made up by the communist left. So actually, this is beyond Maoist. This is already post-Maoist, because community policing is that bullshit theory that people in their own neighborhood should police them and whatnot. Never mind the fact that in the neighborhoods where the police have withdrawn, nothing like that ever happens. Nobody ever steps in and does it. Once in a while you have these groups like the Guardian Angels that come in and they try to shelter people, but that's not the same thing as policing. So I want you to look at this clip that I have here. This is from a little country called China. And you might find a few parallels with the story of these people. I'm not going to play the whole thing, and maybe about 4 or 5 minutes of it.
They ordered me to produce the Red Book and to recite that revolution means rebellion and violence. That day I was wearing a white shirt without pockets, so I wasn't carrying the Red Book with me. If you're not carrying the red book, that means you aren't loyal to Chairman Mao.
啊，你没有带女肉，你对毛主席不忠吧？啊，你以前
How dare you say you love Chairman Mao? You deserve to be overthrown.
更加要打倒你，他就是这样想。
It was December in Shanghai and very cold. They ordered me to stand outside in the playground from morning till night. But then they thought the punishment wasn't severe enough. So they got a big blackboard and pressed it down on me. One of them stood on the right side and one on the left, like a seesaw, and I was squashed in the middle. They wanted to knock me down and keep me down forever.
Xiao Ailing was left with permanent injuries to her face. Up to 1 million were killed or driven to suicide.
Okay, so this kind and gentle society that the Maoists are trying to promote is nothing but mirage. So this kind and gentle society that communism and progressives are promoting is nothing but a mirage. And I hope you got that sense from that clip of Maoist China, but also from the clips from that speech or whatever the hell that was with the Evergreen State College president. You cannot have a society where the decisions of the general whole are made by doctrine, by directives, by principles that are agreed as locking everybody into the same set of rules and with no possibility of dissent, as if, you know, all decisions are made by the collective. That's what's known as groupthink. Okay, and what that led to in Maoist China was a society that turned on itself. It was paranoia. People, you know, neighbors were ratting out on neighbors. This idiot kid, Georgie, whatever the fuck her name was, you know, talk about snitching. You want to talk about the ultimate snitching? That was fucking China. That was Albania. That was East Germany. East Germany was known as the state with the most spies per capita of any country in history, okay? I realize there's a huge glare here. I don't know what the fuck is going on today, but there's, you know, there's a curtain behind me. Look, this is a subject that will become more of an issue now that it's coming to the surface, okay? The first place where it happened that really grabbed the attention of the public recently was Mizzou, the University of Missouri, where it was, in that case, a Black Lives Matter style or affiliated group. I don't think it was officially Black Lives Matter. It was the Concerned Student 1850, whatever it was called. That type of paradigm has carried itself over, okay? And in this case, it's actually worse. The University of Missouri did suffer grievously for its bizarre decision to capitulate to these students. What really I'm suggesting is this, okay? Because Maoism is the cancer that is eating our society alive, okay? The real solution to this is to either close the school, close all the sessions, and disperse these students, because then they won't have what to do. I mean, they could squat on the campus and then they would basically waste their lives away. They would you know, they would have to destroy the campus because they would have nothing else to draw on, okay? Either they would go home or they would basically take their rage out on the campus. And in that case, you would have criminal indictments or whatever. But the easier solution, okay, is to adjourn classes and expel all the students or bring academic consequences on them. Now, this might sound, you know, the Evergreen College president is not going to listen to my solution, because the guy is a patsy. He's trying to go the path of least resistance. He doesn't realize that the students are creating the path of most resistance. It doesn't matter what he'll do. There is no compromise with Maoists because their entire ideology is based on eliminating any possibility of compromise. They have the most extreme ideology of possibly any philosophy in the world. You know, radical Islam today has a lot of common themes with Maoism. You know, that's why I was more focused on Maoism. I published 2 articles last year on my blog. I think it might have even been a 3 or 4 part series, and I'll attach them because I think it's that important. Because this philosophy, what's his name? I think his name is David Horowitz. He's a former radical himself. Talked about it being the worst threat than the left. I think Dennis Prager did too. I just cited that clip that I included was from Nick Taylor, another video maker that he listens to the same network that I do. Good guy. But listen, you expel the students. This is tearing off the Band-Aid in one blow, okay? And it's important to do that. Why do I say it's important to do that? Because otherwise, the more you hedge and basically tangle with these people, the more they're going to step on your toes and knock you over. Okay, and what would happen if you were to expel them or give them a failing grade or give them some sort of academic consequence for this is that these types of things would not continue. At Ohio State, there was a similar demonstration that the college administrators decided that they would not indulge, which is exactly what it is, by the way. You should not be deceived. Giving into these student demands is not compromise, it's indulgence. It's indulging a child. These kids are not ready to actually do anything important with their lives. In fact, what they're doing basically is leading a movement, just like the Young Guards in China, that will basically lead to the destruction of their institution. The faculty hiring changes and all that other nonsense that the collective bargaining leader was talking about is an excellent exhibit of that. The more you bring students, teachers that are basically going to agree with whatever they're talking about, whatever bullshit ideology that they're spouting, the more you're going to have a student body that's filled with a bunch of morons. And that's already the way that Evergreen College is, okay? And then apart from maybe a few exceptions, like the ones that Dr. Weinstein was talking about. So, in closing, I really think that this will crop up again in a number of colleges. In Ohio, we have Oberlin College, where this is already happening from time to time. Probably hasn't happened in as extreme of a situation as Evergreen College, but you know, UC Santa Barbara, that happened I think a month ago, that they took over a building and they demanded somebody painted Pan-African liberation colors or something. So, you know, let's close for today. This is Ramon, Bold Like a Leopard. No Maoism for me. Okay, if this starts happening in my area, you know, we're just going to have to talk about a different way of dealing with it. Okay, and you know, that actually means that people will be in physical danger. This Professor Weinstein was in physical danger. They were talking about kidnapping him and his wife. Okay, now these progressives, these cream puffs, they don't know how to deal with this. Other people will know how to deal with this. If we have a real government response to this, okay, and you know, government, law enforcement, whatever, this has to be dissolved and whatever. And you know, just so you know, I stand on the side of those that will put an end to this. You know, I don't want to see cultural revolution in America the same way it was in China, and it's developing that way. So no Maoism for me. And if you subscribe to that, please, you know, like this video, spread it, watch the Nick Taylor video that I'm going to share below, read my pieces. You know, you can read my other stuff about Obamacare, which I'm, you know, putting out more videos. And let me know what you think. Have a great next couple days. I'm not going to be in the mix, so see you later.